Thank you, Manny. So I'm Keith Ray. I'm the program director of the Master's Degree in Organization Development and Leadership. I am just a little bit about myself. I'm a OD professional, have been for over 25 years, have my own company. And I direct this program, and it's a wonderful program. And we hopefully our students and alumni will attest to that in a moment. But before we get to the students and alumni, I would like to introduce Erica, our admissions director. Erica, could you introduce yourself real quickly, please?
Yeah, I'm very happy to do so. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are now or where you might be listening to this in the future. My name is Erica Fichter. I serve as the Director of Recruitment and Admission here at Fielding. I've been in graduate admissions for almost 12 years now, as weird as that is to say out loud now. But there's two types of events that are my favorite events. One of them are these events where we get students and alumni together and get to hear collective stories, as well as our new admit events where our incoming students get to meet one another. So very excited to be here. I echo many sentiment about how important we understand it is to be able to hear things from the perspective of those actually in the program and have graduated from the program. So extremely grateful for our students and alumni that have taken the time to be here today and share their points of view about the program. I also have a very soft spot in my heart for this program. It really is amazing. Dr. Ray is fantastic, and just excited to be here and welcome you all, and look forward to this event. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Manny, could you go ahead and share the slides, and we'll start with a couple slides, and then we're going to take them off as we get to the questions here so we can see each other. There we go. All righty. So here are our alumni and student panel. We have a few people are not here. I think there's 2 people that aren't present yet. They may join us in a minute. So what I'd like to do is just gonna go in this order here and introduce yourself. And if you're a graduate, so we have, by the way, for those of you listening here, we have 2 groups of people, 2 cohorts here. One cohort has graduated, and the other cohort is in their last module, in their what we call the capstone project. So what I'd like you to do is introduce yourself if you're a graduate or in the capstone phase, a little bit about your background, and then where you live or where you're joining us from. So let's start with, let's see, Corey is not here. Let's start with Dragan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dragan. I am currently in the capstone phase, so currently still student at Fielding. I also previously, prior to the OD, I got my education in the coaching as well, evidence-based coaching program at Fielding. My background is in agile coaching, prior to that in recruiting and HR. And then also recently developing my coaching practice in coaching leaders, but also life coaching. And during this educational phase, I got laid off from my corporate job. So then I took that opportunity to just continue with the school and also developing my coaching practice. And I'm located in Hudson Valley, which is north of New York City.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dragan. Let's see, Kimberly's not here. Mike, over to you.
Hey everybody, I am Mike Cardis. So background, I was a independent organization development consultant for about 15, 16 years. A couple of years ago, probably about 2 years ago, I wanted something different. So I chose to be an internal OD consultant. I spent a little bit of time working at a comprehensive cancer center as their org development specialist. That wasn't really a good fit for me. And so currently I'm the senior organization development for a company called Vital Farms. We sell pasture-raised, ethically produced eggs and butter. So I lead the OD operations inside that mid-sized growing organization. where I live. So currently I am in Buffalo, New York. And I'm sorry, I'm in the capstone part of my process with Reagan and Cigna.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Let's see. How about over to Ross?
Morning all. I'm saying hi from down under. I'm in New Zealand, heading across to Sydney this weekend. I am not an OD specialist, although I did study it at in my first degree, my business degree. But I came to this course at the point of career change. I've worked in television, cable television for a long time. I came here because I figure that this is a very powerful tool to add to a management tool. So I've always been an executive, and I'm currently considering kind of stepping sideways into policy because our industry, like all of them, is going through colossal change. And I think this is put me on a list of people who are going for a role that will impact the whole industry that I'm in. So it's an interesting space.
Yeah, very interesting. As you know, Ross, we had a big strike here in the United States over many policies, right?
Right, all of that. So
Yeah.
with colossal change, tools that we learned through the course, add to that. For me, they add to a broader executive tool belt.
Excellent. Thank you. Sarah, over to you.
Hello, I'm Sarah Huron. I'm coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio. So I'm a graduate. I was in Ross and Shauna's cohort, and we had great fun together. So I have a background as an entrepreneur. So over 19 years, my husband and myself and another partner grew a company. Always had a bit of an OD bent. Before we created the company, we did so, created our mission, vision, and looked at it that way. So then when the business closed, I started my own OD practice, which I've had since 2010. Did a lot of self-learning and decided to kind of formalize and get the credential through fielding, and it was just a fantastic experience. So I'm excited that you're here and are curious about what it could mean for you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Shauna.
Hi, I'm Shauna Betoff. Like Sarah said, I was a part of cohort 6 who graduated in August with Ross, Sarah, and a number of other people. I am about an hour outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and my career path has taken me from coaching high-level athletes and being an athletic director into actually fundraising, and now I am a major gift officer at an independent school, as well as being on a board for a senior living facility.
Great. Thank you, Shauna. And finally, Signa.
Hello. Yes, I'm in cohort 7 in our capstone project with Mike and Dragan. My background is mainly in sport, in operations and event production. And I really love this part of business or any project that I'm working on, the OD pieces. And I discovered that you could actually take a course in it. So that's how I ended up here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all. And as you can see, we have a wide variety of experiences and expertise in our cohorts. So let me move on to the questions here. So these are the questions. I'm not going to probably go through all of these questions, and we'll get to what we can. Let me drop them real quickly here in the chat. If I can find the chat. Here we go. I will drop them in the chat, and then I think what we'll do is we will go stop sharing the slides so that we can see each other. Did that actually share yet? Sorry. How about now? There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so these are the questions. I will definitely start with the first one. So you all be thinking about that. And you each don't have to answer all of these. These are directed, obviously, at our panelists. So we'll just, if you feel like answering it, please do. So let's go with the first one. What is the most impactful projects or modules of the program?
That's such a personal piece, but for me, it was the 505 consulting when we started working with groups. And within our group, we're very fortunate that we have a lot of trust and psychological safety. So the feedback and the way that we were able to work together was incredibly productive for our learning experience.
Wonderful.
For me, it's two. It's 502 and 505. 502 was about organizational culture with focus on DEI, and that's just evoke a lot of thinking on how our systems are structured, and that really kind of personally moved me. But then 505 is about consulting and how all different pieces would come together in a real life scenario that kind of really inspired me again about possibility with the OD.
Great.
I'm going to jump in here and say actually the capstone. So I think prior to completing my capstone, I also probably would have said 505. I think the capstone truly was an opportunity. You spent this entire time gaining all of this great knowledge and resources and building relationships with these people in your cohort and with your professors. And the capstone is a chance to really take all of those individual pieces and tie them together in a real life experience in a way that I don't think a lot of programs offer. And for me, it was exceptionally impactful, you know, and really it was valuable the whole way through, but really it was like the icing on the cake and just truly remarkable.
Shauna, do you mind sharing what your capstone project was?
So I worked with a nonprofit in Santa Barbara, specifically helping them through an operational due diligence process. They were at the beginning of a statutory merger with another local nonprofit. And it was great. Ross will tell you I had absolutely no business before this program doing anything with due diligence or statutory mergers. But it's a testament really to the program and the resources, right? And the personal confidence you develop throughout the program. It ended up being a very successful endeavor, both for me, but also for the nonprofit.
Great, thank you.
I'll step in and just back that up and say the capstone for me was tied the entire thing together. I was, reasonably comfortable with a lot of the being of an age. I was reasonably comfortable with the theory before, but for me, this was a first time consulting. I have always been internal. I've always had consultants, and we worked with a non-profit again in Santa Barbara, which is all organized through the school, and helped them. How can I put it? They were going through a period of deep introspection as a result of change that had happened to them, and we were able to help them replot themselves in a way that they came back to us and said, "This is like organizational therapy. This has just transformed where we are and what we're about." And given them an enormous amount of energy, not to say we resolved everything, but we gave them the energy and the means by which they could approach the next 12 months of their operation. And I
Wonderful.
found that transformational.
Yeah, and very rewarding too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, let's move on to the next question then. So what's a specific example of how you've applied a skill or concept from the program professionally?
I can jump in if everybody's going to be quiet. So I think that for me, I'm working right in a development office as part of a team, and we are looking at doing a lot of growth in a time when I think there's so much going on that people are not always comfortable with it. And so really being able to take, what we learned about culture and about leadership, but also about the communication elements that you discovered to work around the edges to make people comfortable. So you're implementing change, but it's small pieces at a time. So it feels good to everybody, and you're creating small wins, and you're bringing people into the small bits of change. And then they're seeing, 6 months later, oh, wow, wait a second, we just did that. Right. And I think that it's really subtly applying a lot of the work that we did in ways that worked appropriately within my organization.
Yeah.
For me, oh, please go ahead, Mike.
Oh, are you sure? It's okay. All right, so I'll share. And this, so I think it was when I came into this program, I made a specific effort to identify areas I wanted to work on and kind of find out from the class. So I think it was in like 502, we had our first group project. I had a chance to work with a partner, and I told the partner that I wanted to focus more on the data or people analytics side of the project, which is muscle I wanted to build. So we had that chance, and then so I used the class as a safe environment to like gather data from the class, work on some statistics, some data analysis on my own piece, and get feedback from the professor on that, to then be able to kind of springboard that into my organization. So about 3 months ago, we launched this thing called a leadership accelerator. We love egg puns in our company. And I said, hey, what I want to do is build some strong back-end people analytics from our 60 managers going through this, kind of show change, development, and sort of outcomes based upon activity scores, metric scores, and those things. So by having the chance in 502 to test those muscles and build that process out in a safe environment, I was able to bring it to our organization and create a relatively robust like sort of dashboard we're now using with our senior team to show management change, progress, and productivity to make things be more effective.
Wonderful. Thank you, Megan. I'm glad you did that. Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, for me, so I'm not sure. Two things come to mind. So one is that I'm not sure that I would say that I pulled out anything specifically, like one skill. One of the best things to me about fielding is that you learn to think systemically, and it's an integrative process. So yeah, I could name appreciative inquiry or something that was taught us specifically, but for me, it's more about how the whole thing works together, and it's more about a mindset and how you approach things. So that's one of the things I really appreciate. I will say, like, to do a specific skill, one of the things that I'm working on right now is a new launch in a new city. And so it's just a good reminder. It made it easier for me to go back and look for data. One of the things that we're starting is a pay-as-you-can cafe. So I went into the research database and I'm like, oh, okay, what have other people learned? What has been studied about pay-as-you-can cafes? And so, it helped me get more comfortable with not relying necessarily, but taking into perspective other people's research. So I appreciated that.
Yeah. And so, Sarah, did you do that research through the Fielding Library, for example?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I hope we have access to that for a long time.
You do. Yes, okay. You will continue to have access as an alumni. So that's good.
Yeah, thank you.
I still use it. Well, before I became the program director, when I was an alumni, by the way, I am alumni from the PhD program. Mm-hmm. So for many years, I relied on using our library. It's wonderful.
I'd also like to add, I think similar to Sarah, what the program benefited me was in my experience, for example, as an agile coach, I dealt a lot with leadership, like especially with the command and control type of leadership. And a lot of what I learned in school has really validated a lot of the mindset that I have and further helped me, just be like more grounded in the mindset that I already had. I just didn't have the language for, and like the logical approach, for example, that was something that I always practiced, but I didn't even know it was a thing. So it really gave me more of the language and framework to ground myself in.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else on this question? So I'm getting a sense too from what you're all saying here is that it isn't, say, one specific skill you've picked out, but it is sort of this broad spectrum of how all of these things kind of integrate together for you. And you may have had some of this already, right? You may have had some of the theory, some of the skills, much of the knowledge, but the program kind of helps you integrate that into a clearer mindset where you're more confident about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah. Great. Okay, let's move to the next program, or excuse me, the next question.
Can I say one more
Yes.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
The program also does a really good job of building up. So like you take little small, for example, writing a paper or writing, not a thesis, but like your capstone paper, an academic paper, it does build those skills very well. You take a little chunk and then you add to it and you add to it. By the end, you're proficient. So that's how the whole program works, I think, not just for the papers, but for building that mindset as well.
Yeah, good, very good. Thank you. I'm glad it's working that way. that was the intent. So it's good to hear. So how is the value of the program manifested in the short term, and think for yourself also long term, both professionally, and I'm also curious about personally too.
So I'll go because I don't know about the other cohorts, but we have this habit of sitting there in silence. So I'll leap in and break the silence. Weirdly, one of the things that has impacted me most personally is this set of exercises that we do staggered through the course of self-reflection of where are you and what are you doing and why. And it's in theory, it's got nothing actually to do with the course material. It's everything to do with you. And for me, it's been incredibly powerful because I don't think I've done that outside of the context of work or other responsibilities. I haven't actually stepped back and thought that through in a way that the course invites you to do so that you can bring self to what you're doing, which is actually part of what it's doing. So for those that haven't done the course, there's a powerful piece, which is, I want to say, Keith, perhaps informal, which is this requirement that you look at yourself so that you can bring yourself to your practice. And it's kind of hinted at all the way through, but no one can tell you about yourself. You have to do that. But you're forced to do it as part of the course. And for me personally, that was a very powerful set of exercises. I think we might have done 3 or 4 papers over the course of 6 modules where we just, where are you? What are you thinking? Why? How is this going to impact you? What's changed? And it's rare that you would do that outside of the context of an external situation. So I found that hugely impactful for everything else I've done outside.
Good, excellent.
And I'll add 2 things. So the first one has been more pragmatic. So when I was applying for new roles, again, I was looking for new roles, I was pleasantly surprised at how many HR or interviewers, other OD folks knew about fielding. So in the industry, we are known as a relatively good and high performing OD program. Like a lot of folks I interview, they go, "Oh, fielding is a great program." So we are known about in the industry, which was pleasantly surprising to kind of hear that program. So that helped me, at least when people who have other masters in OD or know what the OD field, they know of fielding and they know that the program puts out good students, which is really nice. And the more personal thing, I've worked with Dragon and Cigna on projects throughout the year. One thing that I also really got out of this was how to how to work with a team or a project where you're not the direct team leader, or no one on the team is like in charge. There's no authority to make you do something. We all have to work collaboratively in our own effort to achieve a shared task. And right, there's no like team leader, no project manager, no one's going to fire you if you do a good job or a bad job. No client is saying, how do you work with people who are truly peers to communicate through shared challenges, structure work, edit goals, and combine their ideas to still feel they're valued in that project? And that skill is something we get in this school that's really supported, because again, in the workplace or with a client, it may not be the same power dynamics, but I learned a lot just on myself and how to work with other folks through that program, with that process.
Thank you. That's great. Anyone else on this question?
I think there's also a wonderful opportunity to gain perspectives from people in other industries. And you see how much that transfers. You know, the OD topics transfer between the industries and how effective they can be. I think that for me was very, very powerful. I also think the relationships you have the opportunity to develop with both the professors and the members of your cohort and then alumni are truly remarkable. I was just down with Keith and Austin, seeing a number of people from the OD&L program. Sarah was there too. It was really great to just connect and chat, and you see the impact these people have made on your lives. And I can say personally, it also inspired me to go on and do a PhD program at Fielding. So.
Yes, that's wonderful, Shauna, and I wish you luck with that.
Thank you.
That'll be a lot. I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Thank you. I do too.
Yeah. Okay. Any other question or any other responses to this question? The value of the program manifested in the short and long term, professionally and personally. Okay, let's move on to the last program, or the last question. What advice would you give someone considering this program?
I'm happy to go. This is my second time in grad school, and this time around I am working and going to school, and no matter what you think, if you can't fit it in, you can fit it in. It works. It's been a really interesting experience. You kind of, like Ross was saying about the level of the papers and how those evolve and all of that throughout the program. It's really an interesting challenge for yourself, and whatever you need to learn will come out in this program.
Good. Other advice. What would you tell your friend if they are considering this program?
Well, I'll relay something that's been said to me since I've come out. I've started recently to talk to headhunters and people and consider going back into the workforce. And universally, when I say, look, I've done all of this, but I've also more recently done this master's in this space, and they've universally all said that is a really powerful tool at this point in time of disruption and change and everything that companies are facing and boards are facing and all of that sort of thing, is that we know it's coming, and a lot of people think they can handle it, he said, but the people at the top know that ultimately they can't. And if you've actually had not even, I'm not saying we're all going to go out there and solve the world, but if you've actually taken the time to look at the tools that are required, he said that's a very powerful add-on to the other things you do. So, and I'm not coming at it from as a professional, which you folks all appear to be, but he says it's a powerful language to be able to use for companies that are going through transformation. And so I was surprised that he said, "Oh," I said, "No, that actually puts you in a different lane when we're considering who we put forward."
That's good. That's really good to know. And I'm glad they say that, because I believe that to be the case as well. Because really, like you said, we have a lot of disruption in almost every industry right now, and to navigate that disruption, to navigate the complexities that are going on right now, because there's so much interconnectedness and so much interdependencies that one disruption feeds over into another. Navigating all of that is part of what OD does, and so I'm glad they're aware of that.
Yeah, I would say it's probably never a perfect time to start anything. But if you're on the fence about that, do it, because I think that this program is definitely not like a checkbox program. You're definitely going to gain in professional and personal growth. So it's a year long, and at the end, your reflection will be in gaining a lot. So yeah, if you're on the fence, do it.
And I'll build. I'll say that is one of the benefits that drew me to the program was it is a year-long program, right? The content is pretty intensive for that 7 weeks. But I also tell somebody like it's a year, so it's like it's not a heavy commitment of 3 years. It's a year of just sort of focus. And I also tell somebody do the reading. Like you're not going to understand all the articles, you're not going to grasp all the concepts, but just sit down and take time and read the articles. Eventually, you'll start to kind of grasp the language and you'll understand it. To some folks, maybe easier to begin with and at the end, but like it's a year. Make time to do the reading, and also I would also tell them make time at least every week to interact with your classmates. Go in the chat. You know, if we have time to comment on other students' responses in the chats and the readings, be active. Like comment on student stuff. Read what they're saying. That's how you get a lot out of this class, as opposed to just you driving through it. So the huge social component in OD is a social component, right? It's us. It's we developing this shared work structure together.
Good, very good.
I would simply say it's an intense experience, but it'll be a far richer experience than you've imagined it to be. It really will be, like Mike said, personally, professionally rewarding. Definitely a great experience.
Any other advice you would give? What advice would you have given yourself when you entered the program?
You don't have to be perfect.
I would also give myself advice of you don't have to agree with everything. It's okay actually to have a different opinion.
That's true. Actually, Dragon, that's by design.
Yeah.
We don't, in our program, as you all know, we don't give one consistent view of how to do OD. We want you to decide for yourself, right? Because after so 3 of you have graduated, you're going to continue to be, you're going to continue to see different theories and ideas, and you have to decide what works for you, what fits in your values. So that's very good. Any other advice? So I'd like to open it up to questions now. So for Melissa, Kefren, Lori, Megan, what questions do you have of our panelists? And please feel free to take yourself off mute or even drop something in the chat. And we'd love to see your faces as well, if you can. I know a couple of you said you can't, but.
If anyone would be open to sharing about their capstone projects or any kind of specific areas that they're interested in or have been exploring? I'm curious about that.
A couple of you did share your capstones. That those of you who have finished, but I think those of you who are in your capstones, I don't think you've shared what your capstones are. So if you don't mind, what are you working on right now?
I'll go. So and now in my newer role as being an internal or dev person, I chose. So what I'm doing is currently we have a processing facility that turns out about 6 million eggs per day. And I'm going to be doing a intensive sort of team redesign, sort of task redesign for our training coordinators and our continuous improvement manager inside the department to look at sort of staffing, job roles and tasks, accountability and efficiency, and overall team design across our 24/7 shift operation to improve satisfaction of employees, overall output of employees, and also to improve on time. The amount of sort of uptake or amount of time for new employees to go from no skill to being productive inside the plant.
I can share for mine too. Fielding has connected me with a number of nonprofits that Fielding already has a relationship with. And what I did is I interviewed, or I had initial calls with 3 nonprofits, and I selected one where I thought their challenge and my interests were the best match. And it is a Boys and Girls Club of Santa Barbara. And they're experiencing hiring challenges. So I'm working on a hiring strategy with this client.
Very good.
I'm working with a nonprofit here in Utah. And because it's such a short period of time, you want to do many, many things, but you realize there's really only one. So they decided that succession planning was the most beneficial for them in our conversations. And those, it's interesting getting them to narrow down and focus on what they really want to do too. So it's good for us and for them. Great for communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
My capstone kind of explored 2 things. One was in the same firm. One was a partnership with another OD consultant that I'm considering. So I looked at that through the lens of OD, and then also the partnership that I'm considering entering into is a 2nd-generation family business. Daughter is the primary successor to the father, and so all of the dynamics that are going on there. That was the focus of my capstone.
Wonderful. So there's a question in the chat. What was it like to work with your cohort? And how big is the typical cohort? I can answer that one. We've had cohort sizes anywhere from I believe 20. There was over 20 down as low as, I think at one point there was one that was 5. Typically we're around the 10 range, plus or minus 2 or 3. So that's typically where we are. So they're not huge cohorts, and you get to know each other really well over the period of a year. So for you all, what was it like working with your cohort?
I'll go. So I'm a pretty social person anyway, so I can drag in and sing that we're in my cohort. So if they think I'm wrong or crazy, they can just tell me, I guess, while we're sitting here. It was nice. There's a lot of folks in the cohort who have different experiences, like different ages, different backgrounds. That really led to the class listening and finding time to just be more and just listen to each other. So the cohort went well. There's several projects throughout the class that require you to work with different cohort members, negotiate those pieces. In some of the classes, we did a beginning activity on just team agreements and team structure. I think that was 505. Signa and I worked together on that. So overall, I mean, it was pretty pleasurable. Of course, there were some discussions or some disagreements on how to go about certain projects, how to build PowerPoints. Some folks are more PowerPoint focused than others. All those things you kind of just discuss and work out. You don't always win, you don't always lose, but it's part of learning how to work with other people. And the second part of the question I'll answer quickly is, those of us who work full-time, how do we balance it? So again, I took this master's program on being a new, like, full-time OD, practitioner. And the way that I balanced it normally was just finding time in the evenings and weekends to do the reading and do the work. So normally it would be, my work stops around 5:30, maybe dinner with the kids, the family, some stuff around like 8 o'clock, 8:30, do an hour and a half, 2 hours of reading and work. Not every day, but when I can squeeze it in there. And then with writing papers, a lot of that was the weekends. So, well, there aren't papers every weekend, if there were longer papers, that was usually a Saturday or a Sunday. I remember one quick funny story, like, remember sitting and drinking, we had that book report due at some point, and like I totally spaced on it being due or something happens. And I was like, oh great. So I spent like a full Saturday one weekend just reading the entire book, making the entire PowerPoint, writing the entire paper. It was a long Saturday, but again, you make it work. Again, I'm married. I have 9-year-old twins, an active family life, but we make time. So weekends, evenings, it's not a lot of time, but just blocking time out and doing your best. Like I said, that'd be perfect to get through it.
Thank you.
One of the things that I did, so I have a habit because I've been external for so long of just taking a spreadsheet and calculating my start and end time for everything. So I did a start and end time for my first module and also the second module. And I just budgeted how much time does it really take me to do this. It really is 10 to 15 hours a week. That's what we were told going in, but that's really what it was for me. And so when I knew that was consistent, I just blocked that off, I just knew, well, 2 hours here, 5 hours here, whatever. I will say the simulation blew that away. As I was working with my partner, that was an enormous amount of time that I spent on the simulation. I think that was more related to the nature of the partnership than really what was required. That's just how we worked it out. And it was fine, but it was definitely more than that 10 to 15 hours. So you might want to budget more for that one.
And that's in 505, for those of you who are not sure. That is the consulting module.
And as far as working with other cohort members, I would say, like, realistically, it's challenging, it's frustrating, it's also rewarding, all in the same time, because as he has mentioned before, there could be people that you're working with that have totally opposite views on how to approach a situation or change, or how they view themselves through change, and that can be, when you're working, in a group, that can create certain challenges and learnings and frustrations all in the same time.
So I will add that, it's totally possible to balance a full-time job and a full-time, family commitment. I have 2 teenage daughters, married, all the things that go with that, right? Like it's about time management and scheduling and understanding, like, you may periodically have to miss something, but for the most part, you really don't, right? You get at the beginning of every module, you have a syllabus, when things are coming. If you need to plan ahead to do some extra work when you have more time one weekend versus another, it's totally feasible, right? Mike just popped into the chat. It's a year, and truly it is. It's a year. And then I see somebody popped in, what was the hardest challenge? I think that if you don't have a lot of background in formal OD or reading articles, the first couple modules, sometimes I think a few of us felt like we were drinking from a fire hose. But our professors were amazing, as were other people in the cohort, just saying, just take a breath, one article at a time, one thing at a time, and it does sort itself out. And the other thing I would say, is by the time you get to your capstone, you're not going to remember every chapter you read, or you're not going to remember every article you read, but you're going to remember you had the resource and you know how to go back and find it. So the information is still there. It's really about having faith and trusting the process.
Yes, very good. Yeah, well hydrated. That's a good way to put it. Okay, other thoughts or other questions?
I do want to add too, that the professors were very responsive. Like even when you had a hard time with APA, there was new to some of us, or even a hard time with the articles. Like anytime I reached out to a professor, there was a quick response rate. There was time to talk with them. And also, I think, like you said earlier, it's the course is not meant for you to be a superstar, like knowing all the OD concepts and theories. It's building it. So each student is at different levels of their OD knowledge. And if you don't have any knowledge, then you that's where you kind of start, and the grading is based upon that effort to put in the process. So it was a really great experience. Again, to push the learning and to push the concepts and the frameworks really helpful.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
I just kind of reiterate that a little bit. If you do decide to take it on, and we do joke about the fire hose, that it's not as daunting as you might think, because the first 2 or 3 modules don't require an enormous amount of critical taking apart of the concept, because you're not in that space yet, and so they're manageable because you are simply in that space of absorbing it all. And for me, if there was one thing I would take back, it's to meta tag all of the work that I did in the first 3, so that I knew how to find it, which Shauna mentioned. You will use it. You don't necessarily have to pull it apart at the beginning, but you can later on down the track. And so had I known that, I would have probably tagged a lot more of the material coming through and made it easier to find on the way afterwards. But you evolved to the point where you can do what you probably didn't think you could do in week 1. And it's not that difficult, and it's a very smooth sort of a path. I think for a lot of us, it kind of surprised us.
Very good. Thank you. Any other last questions here or comments? This has all been very wonderful, by the way. So those of you who have graduated, have you stayed in touch with your cohort members?
Well, Shauna and I were down at the fielding in person, as she mentioned, so in that way, but honestly, for me, haven't as much as I thought that we would. I think we've just kind of all, from my perspective, just kind of had to go on to the next thing, because there were some things I'd neglected during my program, so I had to get some catching up done, frankly. So.
I do know of one cohort that is, they've continued with a monthly reading group. So they pick an article or a book, and they'll read it, and they stay in touch that way. Were you going to say something, Ross?
I was going to say some I've not heard from since, and there are some that I consider friends, and so we've chatted outside, and we can have a report. It's great to be able to actually step outside of the course for a moment and say, right, okay, how is this really impacting you, and then take it out into real life. So I found that really powerful and valuable.
Very good.
I'll add one quick thing too is well, not in our cohort. I have reached out to other folks who are alumni or folks who went through fielding who are also internal OD folks. Because again, going from external to internal, I was having not some challenges, but just the world is different. So I had a good resource group in fielding to reach out to and say, hey, you're an internal OD person. I'm seeing these things to help me learn how to better navigate my new role. So having the access to fielding and just reaching out to alumni that I can find is also been helpful. I've talked to, I think, 4 or 5 people who are internal OD folks who have helped me work through just some structural issues and challenges I was having to understand how to be more effective in my role.
Very good. So Melissa, you ask, is it accredited by CHEA? It's actually accredited, we are accredited by Western Area Schools and Colleges, I believe WASC. They may have just changed their name. Do you know, Manny, is it actually a different name now? I can't remember. It is a big accrediting organization, so they accredit like all the University of California universities, so Berkeley and I think they even do Stanford and USC and some of the large private ones. So they're a big accrediting. So yes, we are accredited, but it's that particular organization. Any other questions? If not, I think we might wrap this up. I really thank you all very much for attending, and both the panelists and the people who are interested in the program. And those who are interested, I do hope you join us in the next phase of your journey. Thank you all again. It's wonderful to see you all, and I really appreciate your spending some of your Friday morning with us, or Friday afternoon. I guess it's still probably Friday morning for almost all of us. So thank you all.